Welcome to Midnight Murmurs, a channel dedicated to storytelling that helps you fall asleep. In tonight's video, we embark on a magical journey to an enchanted garden where wonder and adventure await us at every turn. Join me as we explore this magical realm and discover the secrets hidden within its verdant foliage. So sit back, relax, and let the soothing sounds of this story lull you into a peaceful slumber. Let's begin our journey to the Enchanted Garden. Chapter 1: The Discovery of the Enchanted Garden. Once upon a time, there was a young girl named Lily who loved to explore. One day, she stumbled upon an old, rusted gate in the forest near her home. Curious, she pushed it open and was amazed to find a hidden garden beyond it. As she stepped into the garden, she was surrounded by an array of vibrant flowers, sparkling fountains, and lush greenery. But it wasn't just any garden, it was enchanted, as she soon discovered. As she wandered deeper into the garden, she heard the gentle sound of music and followed it to a clearing where she found a group of friendly fairies dancing and singing. The fairies were delighted to see Lily and welcomed her to their garden. Over the course of the day, Lily explored every nook and cranny of the garden, finding all kinds of magical surprises from talking animals to secret hideaways. She felt like she had stumbled upon a whole new world. As the sun began to set, the fairies bid Lily farewell, but not before telling her that she was welcome to return whenever she wanted. Lily left the enchanted garden feeling awestruck and filled with wonder, eager to return to this magical place again. Chapter 2: The Hidden Gate. As Sarah wandered deeper into the enchanted garden, she couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder and excitement coursing through her veins. Every step she took revealed new wonders, from vibrant flowers to sparkling waterfalls and chirping birds. As she approached the center of the garden, she noticed a large, intricately carved gate made of dark wood. The gate was adorned with twisting vines and delicate flowers, and a small lock hung from the center. Sarah couldn't help but feel drawn to the gate, her curiosity piqued. She reached out to touch the lock, and as her fingertips brushed against the metal, a soft tinkling sound filled the air. Suddenly, the lock sprang open, and the gate slowly creaked open. Sarah hesitated for a moment, her heart racing with excitement and anticipation. She took a deep breath and stepped through the gate, feeling as though she was entering a whole new world. As she emerged from the other side of the gate, Sarah found herself in a clearing surrounded by tall trees. The sun shone down on the clearing, casting a warm glow over everything. In the center of the clearing stood a small cottage made of stone and covered in ivy. Smoke drifted lazily from the chimney, and the sound of a crackling fire could be heard from within. Sarah approached the cottage, feeling a sense of peace and contentment wash over her. She peered through the window, and to her surprise, she saw an old woman sitting by the fire, knitting a colorful scarf. The old woman looked up and smiled warmly at Sarah, as if she had been expecting her. "Welcome, child," she said. "I have been waiting for you." Sarah's heart skipped a beat, and she felt a strange tingle in her fingertips. "How did you know I was coming?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The old woman simply smiled and gestured for Sarah to come inside. "Come, child," she said. "There is much for us to discuss." Sarah felt a sense of trust and warmth emanating from the old woman, and without hesitation, she stepped inside the cottage, ready to embark on a new journey of discovery. Chapter 3: The Hidden Garden. After wandering around the garden for what felt like hours, Grace found herself at a dead end. She stood in front of a high wall with ivy climbing up it, blocking her path. But something about the wall caught her eye. There was a small keyhole at the base of the wall. Curiosity piqued, Grace knelt down and peered through the keyhole. On the other side, she could see the glimmering of a lush garden full of vibrant flowers and tall trees. She tried the key that she had been given at the entrance, and to her surprise, it fit perfectly into the lock. She turned it, and the lock clicked open. Pushing open the door, Grace stepped through the threshold and into the most beautiful garden she had ever seen. She was surrounded by flowers of every color, and the sweet scent of jasmine and honeysuckle filled the air. She could hear the gentle trickle of a nearby fountain and the buzzing of bees as they flitted from flower to flower. As Grace walked further into the garden, she noticed that the trees were arranged in a peculiar manner. They twisted and curved in a way that seemed almost intentional, forming a sort of maze. Grace felt a thrill of excitement as she began to explore the twists and turns of the garden, enjoying the sense of discovery as she came upon hidden nooks and crannies. As she turned a corner, she came across a small pond. In the center of the pond was a small island with a single tree, its branches reaching towards the sky. Grace felt drawn to the island and made her way across the stepping stones to reach it. She sat down beneath the tree and closed her eyes, taking in the peacefulness of the garden. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly at peace. As she sat there, she realized that this garden was not just beautiful, it was magical. She didn't know how or why, but she knew that there was something special about this place. With a sense of wonder and excitement, Grace continued to explore the enchanted garden, eager to discover all of its secrets. Chapter 4: A Secret Garden. As the sun began to set, Lily found herself drawn to a secluded area of the garden she had never seen before. The winding path led her to a hidden gate, covered in vines and ivy. She felt a sense of curiosity and wonder as she slowly pushed the gate open, revealing a beautiful secret garden beyond. The garden was unlike any she had ever seen. The air was thick with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, and the grass felt soft and inviting beneath her feet. In the center of the garden stood a small fountain, its water glittering in the last rays of the setting sun. Lily couldn't help but feel like she had stumbled upon something magical. She explored the garden, marveling at the beauty of the plants and the delicate creatures that flitted about. As she was admiring a particularly stunning rose bush, Lily noticed a small, intricately carved stone bench nestled in the shade of a nearby tree. She felt a sudden urge to sit down and rest, and found that the bench was surprisingly comfortable. As she sat there, watching the fireflies begin to twinkle around her, Lily realized that this garden was more than just a beautiful place. It was a sanctuary, a place of peace and solitude where she could escape from the stress and chaos of the outside world. Lily knew that she would return to this secret garden often, to find solace and comfort in its beauty and tranquility. And as she made her way back to the main part of the garden, she felt a sense of gratitude for the chance to have discovered this hidden gem. Chapter 5: The Queen of the Garden. As the sun began to rise and the garden came to life, Alina woke up from her peaceful slumber in the rose house. She stretched her arms and let out a big yawn, feeling refreshed and rejuvenated after a restful night's sleep. She looked out the window and saw the garden in all its glory. The flowers were in full bloom, their vibrant colors painting the landscape like a beautiful canvas. The bees and butterflies were buzzing around, enjoying the nectar from the flowers. It was a sight to behold. Alina got dressed and headed out into the garden. As she walked, she noticed a path that she had not seen before. It was lined with flowers and led to a small clearing in the woods. Curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to follow the path. As she walked deeper into the woods, she heard the sound of music and laughter. The closer she got, the louder it became. Finally, she arrived at the clearing and saw a group of fairies dancing around a beautiful queen. The queen was sitting on a throne made of flowers and looked ethereal. She had long, flowing hair, a crown made of roses, and a gown made of leaves. Her eyes sparkled like the stars, and her smile was warm and inviting. The fairies saw Alina and welcomed her with open arms. They introduced her to the queen, who welcomed her to her garden. Alina was in awe of the queen's beauty and kindness. The queen told Alina that she was the guardian of the garden and all its inhabitants. She told Alina that she had been watching her and that she had a special destiny in the garden. The queen invited Alina to sit beside her and explained that the garden was a magical place where dreams come true. She told Alina that the garden was more than just a beautiful place, it was a world of wonder where anything was possible. She said that the garden had the power to heal and transform people's lives. As Alina listened to the queen, she felt a warmth in her heart. She knew that she had found her true home. She spent the rest of the day exploring the garden with the fairies and talking to the queen. She learned about the different flowers and their properties, the animals that lived in the garden, and the magic that existed in every corner. She felt a sense of wonder and joy that she had never experienced before. As the day came to an end, Alina said goodbye to the queen and the fairies, promising to come back to visit. As she walked back to the rose house, she felt different. She felt more alive and connected to the world around her. She knew that the garden had changed her forever, and she was grateful for the experience. She couldn't wait to see what other adventures awaited her in the Enchanted Garden. Chapter 6: The Mysterious Path. As the sun began to set on the Enchanted Garden, the sky was painted with an array of orange, pink, and purple hues. Adelaide and her new friends, Grace and Leo, made their way to the heart of the garden, where the most beautiful flowers were in full bloom. They had heard a rumor about a hidden path that led to a secret waterfall, and they were determined to find it. As they made their way through the winding paths, the trio came across a large tree with a peculiar carving. It was a map that marked the way to the secret waterfall. Adelaide's eyes lit up with excitement as she deciphered the carving, and they set off on the path marked on the map. The path was lined with blooming flowers of all colors, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of jasmine and lavender. As they continued down the path, they noticed that the flowers were becoming more vibrant and unique. They had never seen flowers like this before, and it seemed as though the further they went, the more extraordinary the flowers became. As they walked, the path began to twist and turn, and they found themselves in a maze of tall hedges. The path was becoming harder to follow, but they knew they had to keep going. They could hear the sound of the waterfall in the distance, and their curiosity drove them forward. Suddenly, the hedges cleared, and they found themselves at the entrance of a grand, ornate garden. The garden was filled with exotic plants and towering trees that sparkled with fairy lights. It was a breathtaking sight, and they stood there in awe for a few moments. Grace spotted a small bench under a nearby tree, and they all sat down to take in the beauty of the garden. As they looked around, they noticed that there was something special about this garden. The flowers and plants seemed to dance and sway to the soft music that played in the background. Adelaide turned to her new friends and said, "This garden truly is enchanted, and we must be careful not to disturb its magic." They sat in silence for a while, taking in the tranquility and peace of the garden. Eventually, they got up and made their way to the secret waterfall, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they had stumbled upon something truly extraordinary. Chapter 7: The Enchanted Labyrinth. As they wandered deeper into the garden, the winding path before them grew narrower, and the dense foliage of trees and shrubs closed in around them. They stepped into a dimly lit area where a strange, eerie mist swirled around their ankles, obscuring their view of the path ahead. "Is this some kind of labyrinth?" Emma whispered to Mia, feeling a twinge of unease. Mia nodded. "Yes, it is. But don't worry, we'll find our way through." As they walked, the mist grew thicker, and the labyrinth seemed to twist and turn in impossible ways. The girls tried to keep their bearings, but the twisting paths and the swirling fog disoriented them. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a small clearing in the middle of the labyrinth. In the center of the clearing stood a statue of a beautiful woman with long hair, holding a golden key in one hand and a silver sword in the other. As they approached the statue, Emma noticed a small inscription at the base. It read, "To find your way through the labyrinth, take the key and follow the light." Mia took the golden key and inserted it into a small hole in the statue's base. As she did, a beam of light shot out from the sword, illuminating a path before them. "Follow the light," Mia said with a smile, leading the way down the illuminated path. They wound their way through the twisting paths of the labyrinth, following the light of the enchanted sword. Finally, they emerged from the maze, feeling triumphant and exhilarated. "That was amazing!" Emma exclaimed, breathing a sigh of relief. Mia smiled and nodded. "I'm glad we made it out. Now, let's see what other wonders this garden holds." Chapter 8: The Mysterious Magic Book. As the days went on, the Enchanted Garden revealed more of its secrets to Alice. She discovered that the flowers in the garden not only looked beautiful but also had magical properties. The bluebell flowers could cure a headache, the lavender could help you sleep, and the rose petals could be used for various remedies. Alice enjoyed exploring the garden and learning about the different plants and their properties. One day, as she wandered around the garden, she stumbled upon a small, dusty book lying on the ground. She picked it up, and as she did, she felt a strange sensation in her fingertips, as if the book was vibrating with energy. She opened the book and saw that it was full of handwritten notes and illustrations, but the words were in a language she didn't understand. Curious, Alice brought the book to the old gardener, who took a closer look at it. He examined the pages, muttering to himself in a language that Alice couldn't recognize. Finally, he looked up and said, "This is a book of magic, my dear. It contains spells and incantations that have been passed down for generations." Alice was fascinated by the idea of magic and couldn't wait to learn more about it. She asked the gardener if he could translate the book for her, but he shook his head. "I'm afraid I can't, child. I only know a few of the spells, and even then, I wouldn't want to risk trying them out. Magic is a powerful force, and it must be respected." Undeterred, Alice decided to study the book on her own. She spent hours poring over the pages, trying to decipher the strange symbols and incantations. She experimented with the spells, trying to see if she could make them work. At first, nothing happened, and she began to think that the book was just a collection of nonsense. But then, one night, as she was studying the book under the light of the moon, she felt a sudden rush of energy. The air around her began to vibrate, and the flowers in the garden rustled and swayed. Alice realized that she had unknowingly cast a spell. She looked up, startled, and saw that the flowers in front of her had grown twice their size and were glowing with a soft, pink light. Excited by her success, Alice continued to study the book, eager to learn more about magic and its secrets. Little did she know that her experimentation would lead her down a dangerous path, and that the book she had found held dark and ancient secrets that should have remained buried. Chapter 9: A Flicker of Hope. As the sun began to set, Alice and Tom made their way towards the maze at the center of the garden. The maze was a winding labyrinth of hedges that concealed secret paths and dead ends. It was rumored that those who dared to enter the maze without a guide were destined to get lost forever. Alice and Tom were determined to find the heart of the maze, where the enchanted fountain was said to grant wishes. They followed the twists and turns, relying on their intuition and a glimmer of hope that guided them. As they reached a dead end, Alice noticed a small opening in the hedge. They crawled through the gap and found themselves in a clearing with a small pond in the center. The pond was surrounded by brightly colored flowers, and in the middle of the pond stood a statue of a mermaid. As they approached the statue, Alice saw that the mermaid was holding a small pearl in her hand. Tom reached out to take the pearl, but as soon as he touched it, the statue came to life. The mermaid smiled at them and said, "Welcome to the Enchanted Garden. You have passed the first test of your journey." Alice and Tom were taken aback by the sudden appearance of the mermaid. They asked her about the fountain and the wishes it granted. The mermaid told them that the fountain was guarded by a powerful sorcerer who only granted wishes to those who were pure of heart. Alice and Tom were determined to prove their worthiness and asked the mermaid how they could do so. The mermaid told them that they must find the key to the sorcerer's tower, where the fountain was located. The key was hidden in a place where darkness met light. Alice and Tom thanked the mermaid and set out to find the key. They knew that it wouldn't be an easy task, but the hope of having their wishes granted gave them the strength to carry on. As they walked through the garden, they noticed a faint glow in the distance. They followed the light and soon found themselves at the edge of a dark forest. The glow was coming from a clearing in the forest where a portal of light had appeared. Alice and Tom exchanged a look of excitement and stepped through the portal, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 10: The Quest for the Missing Key. Eva woke up feeling anxious about the missing key. She couldn't shake the feeling that something important would be lost if they didn't find it soon. She sat up in her bed and looked around the room. The sun was already shining through the window, and she realized that she had slept through most of the morning. She quickly got out of bed and put on her shoes. She had to find the key, no matter what. She walked through the garden, her eyes scanning the ground for any signs of the missing key. She searched high and low, but to no avail. Just as she was about to give up, she heard a faint sound coming from the direction of the greenhouse. She followed the sound and found herself standing in front of the greenhouse door. The door was slightly ajar, and the sound was coming from inside. Eva pushed the door open and stepped inside. She saw something moving behind the potting bench. She cautiously approached the bench and peeked behind it. To her surprise, she saw a small, fluffy bunny nibbling on a carrot. But that wasn't the only thing she saw. Next to the bunny was the missing key. Eva reached out to grab the key, but the bunny hopped away, carrying the key in its mouth. Eva chased after the bunny, but it was too fast. She didn't know what to do. Just as she was about to give up, she heard a voice calling her name. "Eva, what are you doing in here?" It was Mrs. Wilson, the gardener. Eva quickly explained the situation and asked for her help. Mrs. Wilson smiled and said, "I think I know just the thing." Mrs. Wilson disappeared into the shed and returned with a carrot. She handed the carrot to Eva and said, "Bunnies can't resist carrots. Just hold the carrot out, and the bunny will come to you." Eva did as she was told and held out the carrot. The bunny slowly hopped towards her, still holding the key in its mouth. Eva reached out and took the key from the bunny. She gave the bunny the carrot, and it hopped away, happy with its prize. Eva smiled, relieved to have found the missing key. She knew that it was time to go to the castle and see if the key would open the door to the enchanted room. She thanked Mrs. Wilson and hurried back to the house. As she ran, she couldn't help but feel excited about what lay ahead. What secrets would the enchanted room hold? And what adventures awaited her there? Eva knew that she was about to embark on the most magical journey of her life. Chapter 11: The Fountain of Dreams. As the sun began to set, the enchanted garden transformed into a magical wonderland of vibrant colors and mystical creatures. Olivia had never seen anything quite like it. She walked down a winding path lined with glowing mushrooms, and each step she took made the path glow brighter. She came across a breathtaking fountain in the center of a clearing, the water shimmering in the golden light of the sunset. The fountain was unlike any other Olivia had ever seen, with intricate carvings of fairies and unicorns dancing around its edges. As she approached, she noticed the water was different colors, swirling and changing before her eyes. Olivia was mesmerized by the beauty of the fountain and couldn't resist dipping her toes in the cool, refreshing water. As she did, she felt a sudden rush of energy surge through her body, and her mind was filled with vivid dreams and aspirations. She closed her eyes and let the magic of the garden take over. She saw herself achieving all the things she had ever dreamed of, traveling the world, starting her own business, and making a difference in the lives of others. When Olivia opened her eyes, she felt renewed and inspired. She looked around and realized that the sun had completely set and the stars were now shining above her. She knew it was time to head back to the cottage and get some rest, but she couldn't shake the feeling of excitement that the fountain had given her. She knew that the Enchanted Garden had more magic and wonders to offer, and she couldn't wait to explore more of its secrets. Chapter 12: The Secret of the Whispering Trees. As the sun rose over the Enchanted Garden, a soft breeze rustled through the trees, whispering secrets to the flowers below. Laura and her friends sat under the shade of a large oak tree, sipping tea and enjoying the beauty of their surroundings. Suddenly, a rustling in the nearby trees caught their attention. They peered through the branches and saw a flash of green darting through the leaves. Without hesitation, Laura jumped to her feet and ran towards the trees, the others close behind. As they drew closer, they could hear the sound of laughter and chatter coming from within the forest. The trees were so thick that it was difficult to see what was happening, but they could make out the outline of a clearing up ahead. When they reached the edge of the clearing, they gasped in awe. The trees around them were covered in sparkling jewels of every color, reflecting the sunlight in dazzling patterns. In the center of the clearing was a beautiful fountain, surrounded by a ring of flowers. But the most remarkable thing about the clearing was the creatures gathered around the fountain. They were tiny, no more than a few inches tall, with wings like a butterfly and dresses made of petals. They were fairies, and they were dancing and singing in delight. Laura and her friends watched in wonder, afraid to disturb the magical scene before them. Suddenly, one of the fairies noticed them and flew over to investigate. "What brings you to our grove?" she asked, her voice tinkling like bells. "We were exploring the garden and heard your laughter," Laura replied. "We didn't mean to intrude." The fairy smiled, her eyes twinkling. "No intrusion at all. We love visitors. You are welcome to join us in our revelry." Over the next hour, Laura and her friends danced and sang with the fairies, feeling like children again. They felt alive, free, and happy, forgetting about all their worries and fears. As the sun began to set, the fairies started to say their goodbyes. They thanked Laura and her friends for the delightful company, and the group watched in amazement as they fluttered away, disappearing into the whispering trees. Laura and her friends walked back to their cottage, feeling grateful for the enchanting experience. They knew that the Enchanted Garden held many secrets and surprises, and they couldn't wait to uncover them all. To be continued. Chapter 13: The Luminous Lake. As they walked through the garden, Lily and her friends stumbled upon a lake that seemed to be glowing in the distance. They could hear the sound of water trickling and splashing, and the light coming from the lake was so bright that it illuminated the entire garden. They ran towards the lake, eager to explore its wonder. As they approached the lake, they saw that the water was so clear that they could see the bottom. They could see small fish swimming around and plants growing on the lake bed. The water sparkled and shimmered in the sunlight, creating a beautiful and magical display. Suddenly, the water began to glow even brighter, and the plants and fish started to swim towards the center of the lake. The children watched in amazement as a figure emerged from the water. It was a beautiful mermaid with long flowing hair and a shimmering tail. The mermaid smiled at the children and welcomed them to her lake. She told them that the water had special powers and that it could heal any ailments or injuries. She invited them to swim in the lake and experience the magic for themselves. Excited by the prospect of the healing waters, the children jumped into the lake and swam around. They could feel the water tingling on their skin, and they felt a sense of peace and calm wash over them. They stayed in the lake for what felt like hours, feeling refreshed and renewed. As they got out of the lake, the mermaid emerged again and thanked them for visiting her. She told them that they were welcome to come back anytime they needed healing or simply wanted to relax and be surrounded by the enchanting garden. The children waved goodbye to the mermaid and made their way back to the garden path, feeling invigorated and ready for whatever adventure awaited them next. Chapter 14: The Secret Garden. As the group made their way through the enchanted garden, they were in awe of the natural beauty around them. The vibrant flowers, towering trees, and the glistening pond that reflected the bright blue sky seemed to come alive in front of their very eyes. As they walked, they could feel the magic of the garden, and they couldn't help but feel grateful for the opportunity to experience it. Suddenly, they heard a rustling sound coming from behind a large bush. They cautiously approached it, and as they got closer, they could hear the sound of someone humming a sweet melody. Slowly, they peeked around the bush and saw a small, hidden garden. It was the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. The colors were so vibrant that it seemed as if they were glowing. As they looked around, they noticed that the garden was filled with fruit trees, berry bushes, and rows upon rows of vegetables. The garden was carefully tended to and appeared to be a source of great pride for whoever owned it. Curious, they stepped inside the garden and continued to explore. They felt as if they were in a secret world, hidden away from the rest of the enchanted garden. They plucked a few ripe strawberries, and they tasted like pure sunshine. They found some fresh lettuce and fragrant herbs, and the scents were almost too much for them to handle. After exploring the garden for a while, they sat down on a bench and took in the serene beauty around them. As they sat there, they noticed a small sign on the garden gate that read, "The Secret Garden." They realized that they had stumbled upon a hidden gem, and they felt grateful for the experience. As they left the secret garden, they felt a sense of wonder and gratitude. They knew that they would never forget this magical place and the joy it had brought them. They couldn't wait to see what other secrets the enchanted garden held for them to discover. Chapter 15: A Twisted Trail. As the group continued their journey through the enchanted garden, they couldn't help but feel that something was off. The air felt thicker, and the colors seemed to be muted, as if the magic was somehow weaker here. The path they had been following had become twisty and uneven, and they had to watch their steps to avoid tripping over roots and stones. "I don't like this," whispered Sarah, looking around nervously. "It feels like we're not supposed to be here." Liam nodded in agreement. "It's definitely strange. But we have to keep moving forward." As they rounded a bend in the trail, they stumbled upon a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a twisted tree, its branches reaching up towards the sky like the fingers of a desperate creature. The group couldn't help but be drawn towards it, their curiosity piqued. As they approached the tree, they could hear a faint humming sound. As they got closer, the sound grew louder and more intense, until it was almost deafening. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet shook, and the group was thrown off balance. When they opened their eyes, they found themselves in a completely different part of the enchanted garden. The air was fresher, the colors were brighter, and the magic was palpable once again. "Where are we?" asked Sarah, looking around in wonder. "I don't know," said Liam, looking just as confused. "But it feels like we're back on track." As they continued their journey, the group couldn't help but wonder what had happened at the twisted tree. They had a feeling that they had stumbled upon something important, something that they might need to return to later. But for now, they were content to enjoy the beauty of the enchanted garden and to revel in the magic that surrounded them. Chapter 16: The Journey Home. After a night of restful sleep, Sarah and her friends woke up feeling refreshed and ready to continue their journey. They had made good progress the day before, but still had a long way to go before they reached the enchanted garden. As they packed up their belongings, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness knowing that their adventure was coming to an end. She had enjoyed every moment spent with her friends and the magical creatures they had met along the way. They set out on the path once again, following the winding trail through the forest. The trees seemed to whisper words of encouragement to them as they walked, as if they knew they were on a quest to save the enchanted garden. As they walked, Sarah couldn't help but think about all the lessons she had learned during their journey. She had learned the importance of kindness, bravery, and determination. She had also learned that true friends will always stand by your side, no matter what. Just as the sun was setting on the horizon, they finally reached the entrance to the enchanted garden. The garden was just as beautiful as Sarah had remembered it, with colorful flowers, shimmering waterfalls, and friendly creatures roaming about. But there was something different about the garden. It was almost as if the magic had faded away, leaving behind only a faint glow of what once was. Sarah and her friends rushed through the garden, searching for the source of the problem. They eventually found the fairy queen, who looked tired and sad. She explained that the garden was losing its magic because of a dark force that was spreading across the land. Sarah and her friends knew they had to act fast to save the garden. They worked together to cast a powerful spell, channeling all their energy and love into the enchanted garden. Slowly but surely, the magic began to return, and the garden was once again alive with color and beauty. As they looked around, Sarah and her friends couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in what they had accomplished. They had saved the enchanted garden, and in doing so, had proven the power of friendship, love, and determination. As they prepared to leave the garden, Sarah knew that she would never forget this magical adventure. She would always remember the lessons she had learned and the friends she had made along the way. And she knew that, no matter where life took her, the enchanted garden would always hold a special place in her heart. Chapter 17: The Search for the Key. As they walked through the garden, Lucy and Ben couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness knowing that their adventure was soon coming to an end. They had seen so much and experienced so many incredible things, but they still hadn't found the key they were searching for. They continued to make their way through the garden, but this time they were more focused on finding the key than admiring the beauty around them. They searched high and low, looking under rocks and behind trees, but the key was nowhere to be found. Just as they were about to give up, they heard a faint jingling sound coming from a nearby grove of trees. They cautiously made their way over, and as they drew closer, the jingling sound grew louder and more distinct. When they finally reached the trees, they saw a small creature perched on a branch, jingling a set of keys in its hand. It was a mischievous-looking creature with pointed ears and a long, bushy tail. "Excuse us," Lucy said, trying to sound friendly. "We're looking for a key. Do you know where we might find it?" The creature looked at them skeptically before responding. "I might know something, but it'll cost you." I don't do favors for free, you know." Lucy and Ben looked at each other, unsure of what to do. They didn't have any money or anything valuable to offer the creature. "Please," Lucy said, pleadingly. "We really need that key. Is there anything we can do to get it?" The creature considered for a moment before responding. "Well, there is one thing. There's a special flower that grows in a hidden corner of the garden. If you can bring me one of those, I might be able to part with the key." Lucy and Ben nodded, grateful for the chance to continue their quest. They set off in search of the flower, determined to find it and bring it back to the creature. It took them several hours of searching, but they finally found the flower growing in a secluded corner of the garden. They carefully plucked it and made their way back to the tree where the creature was waiting. "Ah, you found it," the creature said, admiring the flower. "Very impressive. I suppose I'll keep up my end of the bargain." With a flourish, the creature handed over the key they had been searching for. Lucy and Ben were overjoyed. They had finally found what they were looking for. They thanked the creature and quickly made their way back to the entrance of the garden, eager to return home and share their incredible adventure with their friends and family. As they walked through the gates, Lucy turned to Ben and said, "I can't believe it's over. It feels like we were only just starting our adventure." Ben smiled. "I know what you mean. But at least we have this key to remember it by. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll come back and have another adventure in this enchanted garden." Chapter 18: The Enchanted Garden. As the sun began to set, the garden came alive with a magical glow. The flowers shone in all the colors of the rainbow, and the leaves on the trees glistened in the warm light. The animals were awake and dancing, celebrating the return of the garden's magic. Lila and her friends sat under a tree, watching the enchanting scene. They were filled with happiness and a sense of awe at the beauty around them. It was hard to believe that this place, which had once been so dull and lifeless, was now a wonderland of magic and wonder. They talked about their adventures in the garden and all the amazing things they had seen and done. They laughed at their misadventures and marveled at their bravery. They knew that they would never forget the memories they had made in the enchanted garden. As they sat, a soft voice spoke to them from behind. They turned to see the wise old tree standing tall and strong. "Congratulations, young ones," the tree said. "You have restored the magic to the garden and shown that even the smallest of creatures can do great things." The friends smiled at each other, feeling proud of what they had accomplished. They knew that they had been a part of something truly special. The tree continued, "As a reward for your bravery and hard work, you may ask for anything you wish from the garden. It will be yours to take, but remember that all magic comes with a price." Lila thought long and hard about what she wanted from the garden. She had been given the opportunity of a lifetime, and she didn't want to waste it. After a few minutes, she turned to her friends and said, "I want nothing from the garden. The experience alone has been more than enough for me." Her friends looked at her in surprise, but they understood her decision. They had all gained something much more valuable than any material possession: the memories and friendship they had formed in the garden. The wise old tree smiled at Lila's decision. "You are wise beyond your years, my dear. May the magic of the Enchanted Garden stay with you always." With those words, the tree disappeared, leaving the friends alone in the garden once more. They sat in silence for a while, taking in the last moments of their adventure. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky, they knew it was time to go home. They got up and started to walk out of the garden, but as they did, they heard a soft voice calling out to them. "Wait," the voice said. "Before you go, there's one last thing I want to give you." They turned to see a small flower with petals as white as snow. It glowed with a soft light and seemed to pulse with magic. "This flower is a reminder of your time in the garden," the voice continued. "Whenever you need a bit of magic in your life, just look at this flower and remember the wonders you experienced here." The friends took the flower and thanked the voice before walking out of the garden, their hearts filled with joy and wonder. As they left, the garden returned to its quiet, peaceful state, waiting for the next adventure to unfold. But for Lila and her friends, the Enchanted Garden would always hold a special place in their hearts, a place where magic and wonder were never far away. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the garden as the group made their way back to the entrance. As they walked, they talked about their favorite parts of the garden and shared stories of their adventures. Suddenly, they heard a rustling in the bushes. They stopped in their tracks and looked around, wondering what it could be. Then, a figure emerged from the bushes. It was the gardener. The gardener greeted them warmly and thanked them for visiting the garden. She then explained that the garden was actually enchanted and that only those with pure hearts could truly appreciate its beauty. The group was stunned but also fascinated by the idea of an enchanted garden. The gardener then handed each of them a small seed, telling them that it was a special seed that could grow into any plant they desired, as long as they nurtured it with love and care. The group thanked the gardener and said their goodbyes, promising to come back and visit the garden again. As they walked away from the garden, each of them held their seed tightly, wondering what kind of plant it would grow into. They all felt a sense of joy and wonder in their hearts, knowing that they had just experienced something truly magical. Days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, and each member of the group watched their seed grow into a beautiful plant that reminded them of the enchanted garden they had visited. They nurtured their plants with care and love, just as the gardener had instructed them to do. And so, the garden lived on in their hearts and in the plants they had grown. The memory of their adventure remained with them always, and they knew that they had been truly blessed to have visited such a magical place. Thank you for joining us today for this story, The Enchanted Garden, a magical escape to a world of wonder. We hope you enjoyed following our protagonist on their journey through this captivating and enchanting world, full of wonder and adventure. Remember, the power of imagination can take us to incredible places, even in our everyday lives. So, take a moment to let your mind wander and imagine the endless possibilities that await you. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to our channel for more magical tales like this one. And as always, thank you for watching.